And here he is, the governor of the state of Connecticut. And you know, the proper term, I've been criticized for this, but the proper term is His Excellency the Governor.
I can assure you my wife does not use that, and you don't have to either.
All right, well, if your wife doesn't use it, then we'll bury it for now. All right, let's get right to the questions. Thanks again for joining us on Ask the Governor. This is from David in Manchester. He says, we were told 20 years ago that the income tax was the answer to our fiscal problems, yet the state's spending and the deficit have tripled. Why will your tax increases bring a different result?
Well, because I'm starting in a different place. We are going to GAAP finance rules, generally accepted accounting principles. We're going to be transparent and tell the truth about where we are in the budget. I think what happened over the last 20 years is people kept spending money that they didn't really have because they were following accounting rules that didn't make them have to admit the truth. So I began, the day I was sworn in, I walked from one building to another. The first thing I did was to sign an executive order on generally accepted accounting principles. Today we put out a report by the Secretary of OPM which details that by 2014 we will be fully compliant and will have begun paying off the balance of that GAAP transition.
So for the benefit of those who don't know government speak, OPM is the Office of Policy and Management, which is really the state budget office.
Right.
All right, next question. This is from Robert in Madison. He says, are you prepared to start laying off state employees if union concessions don't come through?
Yes.
That's simple. And I think I just said...
it's simple to say. It's painful for the individuals who have to experience that. It will be painful to reorganize state government in a way that I'd prefer not to. I'd rather create efficiencies over a period of time, limited period of time, but a limited period of time. But if I'm not given that option because we can't come together and to renegotiate these contracts, then I have no other option. And so the answer is yes.
I know you were just meeting with Mark Ojakian, who's your negotiator in these talks. Any news to report?
We're still talking.
Still talking. Well, that's a good thing.
It is a good thing. I mean, listen, if we weren't talking, then you're out of hope. We continue to have these conversations. Listen, I've done this a little bit differently than about 45 other governors. I'm actually admitting what the reality is in Connecticut, and that is that our deficit is too big to cut our way out of it, and too big to tax our way out of it, and it's going to take some combination of the two. That is all built on the presumption that the employee group will come back and have reasonable negotiations, and that we'll get to an agreement. Absent that, I don't have a lot of other options.
All right, next question. This is from Christopher in Durham. With whatever new taxes are placed on Connecticut citizens, why can't they be sunset when the state's debt is covered? Same for the union concessions. In other words, when the things look good again, that these increases could be removed.
Well, let's take one at a time. On the employee side, we have the 5th worst funded pension plan of all 50 states in the nation. It is not sustainable, nor will it become sustainable simply because the economy improves. So we really need to talk about some level of structural change there. That's why. With respect to revenue side, we've exhausted $1.5 million in rainy day funds. We've spent all of the stimulus money, and the governor and the legislature are last governor requiring that I borrow money to close this year's balance. I hope we get to the point in relatively short order that we can start cutting taxes. Nothing would make me happier than to be able to do that. But I think we do owe an obligation to rebuild some portion of that rainy day fund first.
All right, let's go to the next question from WTNH.com. This is Joe in Watertown. How will you win back the support of the unions for the next election after asking them for these concessions?
Well, what you don't want is a governor who makes promises they can't keep, and I didn't do that. What I promised labor was that I would treat them with respect, and I have, and that we would have discussions about issues, and we are. What I did not promise them is that their life wasn't going to change. Nor did I promise during a heated campaign that I would balance the budget without raising taxes. You know, I was running against a guy who was running around the state saying he was going to balance the $3.5 billion deficit by cutting spending by $2 billion and not raising taxes. Well, that's $1.5 billion out of whack. So I didn't make the promise that he made. And in some senses, maybe because I wouldn't make promises to labor, and I wouldn't make promises that I couldn't keep to the public. Maybe I'm the right guy at the right time to actually put this state back in order.
Jennifer in Winstead asks, have you and the other state legislators, well, you and the state legislators, I guess that should be, taken a pay cut or accepted higher insurance premiums to help the state of Connecticut? What's being done to eliminate or limit pensions and benefits for retired state employees?
Well, again, the master document with respect to whatever anyone's paid in state government it is in fact the agreements with labor, organized labor. So whatever comes will be applied to all. But let me go a step further. I lowered the number of employees in the governor's office by 15%, and no one who came into the state government to work in my administration is eligible for these quote-unquote longevity payments.
Right, they're just going out this week, I think.
Yeah, so my employees, some of whom have come back into government after years of service, are not eligible for that. So yeah, I am leading by example.
All right, we'll have more of your questions coming up. Next on Action News. Boy, that was a slip. Next coming up on News 8 at 5:30. Millions of state and federal dollars getting pumped into a new high-speed rail corridor. Some want to know if it's worth it. Plus, we'll talk about a tax that could have utilities saying they'll leave you in the dark.